It's not every day that you find a project that's more aligned with crypto's original values than Bitcoin. And that's kind of crazy to say, considering that Bitcoin started what we know as the crypto industry. But the cypherpunks, the community from which Bitcoin emerged, were around for decades before. Zcash is born from those values. And for a long time, the crypto industry looked at it as a joke. But they're not laughing anymore.
Among the other fatal flaws that I perceived in Bitcoin was the fact that it leaks everyone's information to everyone else.
People just sort of assume that Bitcoin is anonymous.
Every time you do anything on the blockchain, it's transparently broadcasted to everybody on Earth, and they can see everything you've ever done.
When you say, I don't care about the right to privacy because I have nothing to hide, that's no different than saying, I don't care about freedom of speech because I have nothing to say.
Most Americans don't want freedom. They want security.
You and I care about this stuff because I think we're relics who remember when privacy was a thing.
Because if you don't know who someone is, you can't act against them on the basis of who they are.
Zcash is unstoppable private money. So I was going to tell you about Zcash and how Zcash works, but I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you about the heart behind it and what we're actually trying to accomplish.
We want to change the world for the better and to free people. That's the goal. And the mechanism of action is we're going to write a bunch of code.
We built Zcash to be unstoppable private money. Fully decentralized, fully private, encrypted, to protect your liberty, to protect your agency, to protect your security.
They're the first guys who actually pioneered ZK proofs.
It's about the fact that the banks have failed. It's about the fact the political system has failed. It's about the fact that we need an exit. It's about the fact that we need self-sovereignty. And the missing part of that is privacy.
This is the story of how a privacy coin might be crypto's most important contribution to the world. The following is my overview and investment thesis for Zcash's token. It is not financial advice. I am not recommending that you buy it. If you do, you'll probably lose money. And even if you make money, you'll probably find a way to lose that. If you find the following interesting, if it tugs at the emotional strings and the rebellious energy that got you into crypto in the first place, then this is your sign to learn more about Zcash and how unstoppable private money has the power to change the world. The moment I rediscovered Zcash was like it is for many because of its recent price action. People have very different feelings about token prices. Some people think it's bad that you watch price at all. Others think the prices are irrelevant because the market is so volatile. And some of our industry leaders act like prices simply don't exist. But price is essential. It is the ever-present meme that's fueled our industry from the beginning.
I'm right here watching history be made. Bitcoin is now up to $111. It's an all-time high, and it's continuing to rise. I've seen it break 3 times today. It went up to 110, and this is the highest that it's been. It's ridiculous.
Price is a part of a very real positive feedback loop. It starts with building something good. Once it's launched, people realize it's good, they buy it, the price goes up. The price going up brings more attention to it, more people realize it's good, and repeat from there. A few weeks ago, I saw some people that I respect on X talking about Zcash. My understanding of the project, aside from people having made fun of it for years, was essentially that it was some kind of harmless academic experiment. Cool project, gigabrain team, crazy advanced math, but that nobody really cared about privacy. For context, Zcash launched in 2016 and has had pretty anticlimactic price action for the past 9 years. Hence why everybody was making fun of it. When everything pumped, it was the one coin that didn't. But a few weeks ago, Zcash started going up rapidly. I thought maybe people do care about privacy. I knew enough lore to know that Zuko, Zcash's founder, was a hardcore cypherpunk, which is not something you see all over the industry today. And the price continued to go up. I thought, I'll feel pretty stupid if I've known about this thing for 8 years and never took the time to look into it. Curiosity is your best weapon in crypto. When that little alarm bell goes off that says something interesting is happening here, stop and take the time to find out why. There could be a great opportunity in front of you. Learning about Zcash, that alarm bell felt very similar to the first time that I discovered Bitcoin. So here's how this video is going to go down. I'm going to tell you what Zcash is, why it's important, and then I'm going to drop some history on the cypherpunks to give you a little context. Then we'll get into who's involved in Zcash, I'll give you a brief history of the project, and finally we'll cover my investment thesis. Zcash is Bitcoin with built-in privacy. A lot of its design is quite similar to Bitcoin. It uses proof of work consensus, its block rewards half every 4 years, and it has a 21 million coin hard cap. What sets it apart from Bitcoin is that privacy is at its core. The Bitcoin ledger is public, meaning that anyone can see every transaction that's ever occurred. That includes information like the sender, the receiver, the amount exchanged, and the time a transaction occurred. Bitcoin advocates market this transparency as a positive thing. When the government says Bitcoin is for cyber criminals, we say, hey, there's nothing shady going on over here. You can see all of our transactions. Unfortunately, the flip side of full transparency is complete surveillance. When you buy a coffee today, the shop owner, the credit card company, and maybe a couple of banks get to see some information about the transaction that just occurred. When you buy that same coffee with Bitcoin, anyone on the internet can see your entire financial history. That means information like how much money is in your account, how much debt you owe, how much your business pays its suppliers, and perhaps most dangerous, where you buy your coffee every morning. Even if you have nothing to hide, you probably wouldn't freely post all of that information on the internet. That's a world that runs on Bitcoin. A future that a lot of us, perhaps unwittingly, are fighting for. A future where every transaction you've ever made is traceable back to you, not only by the IRS or the NSA, but by anyone with an internet connection. That means people like scammers, salespeople, bad actors, and your business competitors. One of the co-founders of Ledger was recently kidnapped in France and ransomed for his crypto. We don't know if his on-chain activity gave his attackers any info on his location. We do know that crypto is the easiest way in history to move enormous amounts of money privately and quickly. So if you have any significant amount of money on-chain, you should want to keep that private. Zcash solves the privacy problem by using zero-knowledge or ZK proofs and shielded pools. ZK proofs are a way to mathematically prove that a piece of information is true without needing to reveal the underlying information. I once got locked out of my Facebook account, and to get back in, they required that I give them a photo of my driver's license. I declined because that's more information than I would like to share with Zuck. But in a world with ZK proofs, I can take a photo of my license and prove my identity to Zuck without sharing the underlying photo with him. This technology is fundamental to Zcash. In practice, you shield your ZEC or make it private by sending it to a shielded pool. You can think of the shielded pool like a black box. Nobody can see what's going on inside. When you send ZEC from one shielded address to another, the protocol uses ZK proofs to prove that you have the funds to spend, and then the black box spits out those tokens to the other address. The creator of the transaction, you in this case, can see all of its information, the sender, receiver, amount, all of that. But the receiver can only see that they received some funds from the black box at a certain time. The fine people of the internet can only see a ZK proof proving that a valid transaction took place. That proof has no information that can be linked back to you. And everyone else on Earth now has access to completely private money controlled by no central authority. At no point in history has this ever been the case. It's important to note that privacy is nuanced, and without the proper precautions, your transactions can still be linked back to you. The power of the shielded pool lies in how long your funds have been in there, the total size of the pool, and the amount of activity in and out of it. If you send 67.55 ZEC into the shielded pool, and then you withdraw 67.55 ZEC 5 minutes later, someone analyzing the chain could make a strong case that those two transactions were connected. And once that connection is made, your activity is significantly less private. If you were to say, wait a few weeks and then move 5 ZEC at a time, an observer would have almost zero ability to trace those transactions back to you. Just like the animal kingdom, there's safety in numbers. Let's say there are 6 deposits into the shielded pool. 5 deposit 1 ZEC and 1 deposits 100 ZEC. If anyone withdraws more than 5 ZEC, it'll be obvious that it was the same person who deposited 100. There are currently more than 4.5 million ZEC in Zcash's largest pool, which gives you strong privacy on this front. Pool activity. If the shielded pool you're using has only 5 previous deposits and you're the 6th, and you withdraw from the pool, Anyone watching would know that whoever withdrew from the pool must be one of the 6. Fortunately for Zcash, there are currently millions of deposits into the shielded pool. If you take the proper precautions, like leaving your tokens in there for a few weeks and switching up the amounts you withdraw, it will be nearly impossible to link any information back to you. So why is all this important? Why are you in crypto? Did you come here because you believe that money should exist outside of the government? Was it because you wanted to gamble your way out of the permanent underclass? Or maybe it was because you wanted to build applications that live on forever? Crypto attracts a wide range of characters from across industries, geographies, ideologies. Everybody comes for a different reason and they stay for even more. Crypto for me was about exiting the system. When I was graduating college, all of my friends were going to become investment bankers or consultants. Crypto represented this other path that you could take. I knew that there was a different world out there, and I had lost a lot of my money trading, but that little alarm bell was going off saying that something interesting was happening here. It was something that I wanted to be a part of. And what was that thing? It's often hard to put into words, but at its core, it was the cypherpunk movement. I don't write code, and I'm not that into personal privacy per se, but the idea and the ethos around building and contributing to things that exist outside of the system, things that the most powerful government couldn't stop if they wanted to. That's the kind of energy that's kept me in crypto this long. What many people don't realize is that the cypherpunk movement was going on long before the launch of Bitcoin. Crypto didn't start with Bitcoin. It started back in the 80s when the internet was in its infancy. In 1996, Zuko went to work on a project called Zcash, run by a guy named David Chong. Zcash was an early attempt to build what Bitcoin would eventually succeed at. And Zuko went to go work on it 12 years before the Bitcoin white paper. And David Chom had been working on similar ideas since the early 80s. The cypherpunks have been fighting for our rights on the internet since its beginning. In 1993, Phil Zimmermann developed PGP, or Pretty Good Privacy, an encryption tool that let regular people encrypt things like emails. At the time, the Cold War had just ended, and the US classified encryption as a munition. So when Zimmermann published PGP on the web, the US government investigated him for international arms trafficking, a pretty serious offense. Zimmermann claimed that code is speech and fundamentally protected by our First Amendment right. He then proceeded to print the source code for PGP on the hardcover of a book and sell it internationally to prove his point. After years in court, the government finally dropped the charges. This battle is known as the beginning of the crypto wars. And the original crypto wars ring similar to what Alexei Pertsev and Roman Storm are dealing with in the Tornado Cash trials. Tornado Cash is an open source privacy tool for transactions on Ethereum. In 2023, it was sanctioned by OFAC because the North Korean hackers, the Lazarus Group, were using it to launder money. It's the first time in history that a piece of code has been sanctioned by the government. Thankfully, OFAC reversed its decision earlier this year, but Alexei is still in prison, serving more than a 5-year sentence in the Netherlands, and Roman is still awaiting trial in the US. The crypto wars are far from over. A few years after the Zimmermann case, Netscape and Mark Andreessen had to fight the government to include encryption in web browsers. Without it, using your credit card online would have been like broadcasting your PIN code to the entire world. I remember how weary my parents were when I was using a credit card on the internet in the early 2000s. Mark once said that you can't have an online economy without trust, and you can't have trust without encryption. Today, encryption is legal to use, but the surveillance state is far more powerful than we could have ever anticipated. Look no further than Edward Snowden and the documents he released to the press in 2013. They showed that the US government was spying on everything from WhatsApp messages to Snapchat to even looking through the camera on your phone and computer to see what you were doing. The devices we carry in our pockets and everything we do on them, including our Bitcoin transactions, are under complete surveillance. Now, I don't say this to scare you or to try to get you to put a tinfoil hat on. It's a gross reality of modern life, but there is a way that we can fight back. You come from a long line of people who risked everything to get this technology, encryption, crypto, to where it is today. But when you look around you, who still understands the mission? Is it the VCs, the corporate chains, the banks that are building Hyperledger Besu forks? Is it BlackRock and the Bitcoin ETF issuers, or Michael Saylor and the DATs? It's none of those. It's us. It's the people. This battle will be fought and won by individuals that believe that we have a right to privacy on the internet. And how do you fight? It's not by signing petitions or posting to your Instagram story. We fight this battle by peacefully opting out of the fiat money system that controls the world that we live in. And by opting out of that system, we can opt into a new paradigm of privacy and freedom. You fight in today's crypto wars by shielding your Zcash. It's a small action. It may seem insignificant, but it's the closest thing we have to throwing the tea in the harbor. Every ZEC you shield is a small revolution in itself. So who's involved in Zcash? We'll start with Zuko Wilcox O'Hearn. Zuko is one of the founders of Zcash. He was previously the CEO of the Electric Coin Company, the original development org for Zcash, and he is currently the head of product at Shielded Labs, one of Zcash's biggest contributors. He is as OG as it gets. As I mentioned earlier, he left college in 1996 to go work on DigiCash with David Chaum. DigiCash was one of the first attempts to create private money on the internet. Zuko was deep in the cypherpunk world. He wrote the first blog about Bitcoin in January of 2009, and Satoshi linked to that blog on the original Bitcoin.org website. Zuko was one of the first people involved in Bitcoin because he had been thinking about a solution to private, decentralized digital money for more than a decade before Satoshi's white paper. Next, we're going to talk about Sean Bowe. He dropped out of school in 2015 to join the Zcash team before its launch. He was one of the few engineers tasked with secretly fixing a critical bug in Zcash in 2018. They succeeded. He pushed the entire field of zero-knowledge proofs forward in 2019 by developing Halo, a system for recursive zero-knowledge proofs that allow you to prove arbitrary data. This removed the need for a trusted setup within Zcash. Now, what's a trusted setup? In the early days, the Zcash team had to go through all kinds of crazy precautions to perform something called a key ceremony. The team knew that they couldn't build a new form of money for the entire world with a system that depended on trusting other humans. Sean's Halo development fixed Zcash's trust dependence and allowed the protocol to scale by nearly 100x. In 2016, it could take 30 to 60 seconds to send a private transaction on a laptop. That's because ZK proofs are really computationally intensive. It takes the computer a lot of work in order to do all the math to create that privacy for you. After Halo and its successor Halo 2, you could send private transactions on a phone in a few seconds. Sean is currently working on Zcash's next major upgrade called Project Tachyon, which is set to scale the protocol by another 100x. And last, we have Edward Snowden. Edward was one of the 6 original members of the Zcash key ceremony. He spent his career in US intelligence organizations like the CIA and NSA. And in 2013, he risked his life to show that those organizations were spying on the digital communications of the entire world, including US citizens. There are many more people in the Zcash community who have made incredible contributions, too many to include here. Some noteworthy supporters of Zcash include Hal Finney, a legendary cypherpunk and one of the original Bitcoiners, also one of Zuko's mentors, Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, Balaji Srinivasan, the previous CTO of Coinbase and propagator of the network state, Naval Ravikant, the founder of AngelList and one of the best thinkers in Silicon Valley, Eli Ben Sassoon, one of the original cryptographers that founded Zcash and then went on to found Starkware, Kobe, the president of Crypto Twitter, and Cryptopathic, one of the most OG crypto Twitter guys. These people are all longtime crypto participants and cypherpunks. They've worked across different, often competing organizations to Zcash, and yet they fervently support it. Now, why is that? It's because Zcash's values are more closely aligned with crypto's values than even the Bitcoin community is today. Zcash represents why a lot of these people came to crypto in the first place, and that's why its ideas are so powerful now. A short history of the Zcash project. In 2013, 2014, a group of academic researchers publishes the Zero Coin white paper, the earliest version of what would become Zcash. It wasn't quite efficient enough to be brought to production. In 2014, another group of academics improves on the Zero Coin protocol by publishing a paper describing a separate Bitcoin-like blockchain that uses zero-knowledge proofs to provide cryptographic privacy to transactions. They call it Zcash. In 2014, Zuko reads the Zcash paper, founds the Electric Coin Company with some of its authors, and works to productize the open source protocol. In 2016, the team launches the first production version of Zcash, called Sprout. This is also the first time that zero-knowledge proofs have ever been used in an actual product. In 2018, Zcash pushes an upgrade called Sapling. It reduces the time to prove transactions by 90%, making the token much more feasible to use. In 2022, the team pushes an update called Orchard. Zcash is upgraded to a new shielded pool, removing the need for a trusted setup. Shanbo's Halo and Halo 2 upgrades, which use recursive cryptography, then deliver 100x speed improvement to the network, enabling private transactions at scale on devices like mobile phones. In 2024, the Electric Coin Company releases Zashi, its premier mobile wallet. In 2025, Zashi integrates with near intents and partners like Flexa. Near intents allow you to use your private money to pay for anything in any coin on any blockchain, all from your phone. And Flexa enables you to spend your shielded Zcash at stores like Chipotle and Lowe's. In 2026, we should have Tachyon. Why am I investing? I'm investing because the team cares about their holders. They will come for your Bitcoins. Zcash is money. The Bitcoin catch-up trade, because technology evolves over time and Zcash iterates fast. Bitcoin's immaculate conception, because Zcash has been long overlooked and there's information arbitrage. The social layer, and the smartest guy in the room thesis. Even if the price of Zcash goes down, I'll feel good about my investment because I'm contributing to something that I truly believe in. There's an important nuance here. Holding an asset directly contributes to the network. Many people don't believe this. In fact, the vast majority of projects do not treat their holders as contributors. They believe that contributors are parties like the team or third-party developers or governance voters. The holders of the token themselves are kind of like second-class citizens in the community. This framing is wrong for any assets holders. It's especially wrong for Zcash. The Zcash community knows that. With any asset, someone who's holding it and not selling is actively contributing to stabilizing or increasing the price. Stabilizing or increasing the price plays into the valuable flywheel that we talked about earlier. The increasing price leads to more resources for the team in the form of direct funds, attention, more third-party developers, and prioritization of integrations in other apps and ecosystems. So by holding any asset, you actively contribute to that community. In the case of Zcash, this is further amplified because more coins that are in the shielded pool means better privacy for everyone. Here's a graph showing the number of shielded ZEC over time. As this graph goes up and to the right, all of us become a bit safer. I particularly like the way that Zcash's leaders talk about their holder. In today's crypto industry, whether out of fear for the SEC or some kind of moral superiority to token prices, it's rare for teams to talk about their holders at all. Not Zcash. They talk about them all the time. Being a holder means being part of the community, and the team considers themselves holders too. In a recent interview about Tachyon, Shanbo describes the pressure that he feels from the community to ship great products on ambitious timelines. Listen to this.
I think it's really important that we work on ambitious things in Zcash. Ambitious timelines. Everything worth doing is worth doing on ambitious timelines, I think. And it's really nice to have this like sort of Damocles over your head because you know your credibility. You're gonna look like a clown to the Zcash community to be like, you said that you were gonna get this done in a year and you didn't. And you wake up every day and you go, God, I don't want to look like an idiot. I really want to get this out. And in the past, that's really motivated me to work really hard to finish something. Now, maybe it. I don't want to speculate, but maybe it does hit a delay, and I'm like, but it has to hurt. It has to be painful. And that's a forcing function for making good effort. And we owe that to the ZEC holders. And we owe that to our mission, actually. So we need to be ambitious.
Let me repeat that. We owe that to the ZEC holder. When's the last time you heard Vitalik talk about Ethereum holders? No hate on Vitalik, he's great. But do you think he feels like he owes something to Ethereum holders? I don't. You could say the same thing about most protocol or token founders. Once the token is launched, they tend to act like it's some byproduct of the platform that they built. At Zcash, the token is the thing. Owning it, shielding it, and using it is how you contribute to the network and how you fight for the privacy rights of people everywhere. I also really appreciate how Zuko and the other teams talk openly about the token's price. They don't claim to predict it or tell you it's going to go up. They don't pretend it doesn't exist either. They understand that the higher that it goes, the better their chances of bringing private, unstoppable money to the entire world. I believe that pragmatism around the token extends to other areas of their work. If other teams can bend reality to ignore the multi-billion-dollar tokens that they created, then how else might they be deceiving themselves? Number 2, they will come for your Bitcoins. As the US dollar becomes worthless, Bitcoin will go up. I firmly believe that our Bitcoins will be worth more than $1 million per coin. That doesn't even sound crazy anymore. But when that happens, what will the rest of the world look like? Worthless fiat, hyperinflation, soaring asset prices. When Donald is out and they elect Zoran or AOC or Elizabeth Warren to be the next president, do you think they'll be kind to the newly minted Bitcoin millionaires of the world? Unlike the majority of wealth throughout human history, which was created by productive businesses, all you did was buy magic internet money, essentially betting on the state to lose its power. Unfortunately for you, the state still has a monopoly on violence. And because all your Bitcoin transactions are public, they'll know exactly where to find you and how much you owe them. When the government is dealing with social unrest from the rapidly increasing economic divide in our country, and they can't print money fast enough for the social welfare programs they want, what makes you think they won't take it from you? Is it because you won't tell them your secret passphrase? In 1933, FDR forced US citizens to sell back their gold to the government. Non-compliance was a federal crime punishable by up to 10 years in prison. Unlike Bitcoin, gold is actually pretty private. In 1933, you could have dug a hole in your backyard and hid your gold there fairly well. Nowadays, the government can send one email to Coinbase or Kraken and know exactly how much Bitcoin you've purchased and everything you've ever done with it. Obfuscating your holdings by putting your money through Monero or something like Tornado Cash is not going to protect you from state-level surveillance. In a battle between Monero or Palantir, I'm taking Palantir 100 out of 100 times. The best way to protect yourself in this world is to make your money private. The state can't take what it can't see. And the more people that shield their assets and make their money private, the better protected all of us are. I hope that the world I describe here does not come to pass. But if you believe in Bitcoin, on some level, you've thought about these possibilities. You probably bought Bitcoin because you understand that the fiat money system is deeply flawed and that the clock is ticking. I sure did. But not many people think about what happens when the clock runs out. For our entire lives, we've watched the state decay into a self-serving mess of perverse incentives. Just for using crypto and writing open source code, they've called us cyber criminals, they've debanked our leaders, and they've tried to put us in jail. The line between the world we live in and the one where the government confiscates all the Bitcoin on Coinbase and Kraken is thin. When people buy Bitcoin, they often worry, what if I'm wrong and the price goes down? But the real question is, what if you're right and Bitcoin goes up? And the institutions which keep order in our society fall apart in the process. Zcash is money, and money is the best use case in crypto. Let's break it down. Bitcoin is crypto's longtime market leader, and there's a lot of experiments to do other things with it, but primarily it functions as money or internet native capital. Bitcoin doesn't have any real competitors. Some Ethereum people claim that ETH is money. Same with some people on Solana. But ultimately, it seems like those platforms and L1s in general are valued based on the applications and other infrastructure that's built on top of them. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is not valued because of the speed of its layer 1 blockchain, but rather the fact that the token itself is used as a store of value or money. The next largest tokens that could also be considered money are Dogecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Monero, and Zcash. Dogecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin are all direct forks of Bitcoin with founders and teams that have since left them. Monero is much more legitimate. It innovates on Bitcoin with privacy features and is actually used by a lot of people in black markets today. I'm not a security expert or a cryptographer, but from my research, it seems like Monero's privacy properties are not as strong as Zcash's, and that they are actually working on upgrading to a version that is more like Zcash. And that leaves us with Zcash as pretty much the only legitimate competitor to Bitcoin. I'm not aware of any tokens smaller than Zcash that also claim to be money in the same way. Number 4 is the Bitcoin catch-up trade. So if Bitcoin is money, and that's crypto's strongest use case, then you'd have to imagine at some point that there would be a legitimate competitor to Bitcoin in that arena. To think that a legitimate competitor to Bitcoin is impossible is dogmatic and closed-minded. Bitcoin has serious, often unaddressed issues with both privacy and scaling. And Zcash makes a real case for improving on both of those fronts. I'm not saying that Zcash will replace Bitcoin, but let's consider how valuable privacy and scalability are. The market has already accepted that Bitcoin does not work well as money and functions more like a store of value or digital gold. So the real question to us is, what is the value of private, scalable digital money, which is essentially the original vision of Bitcoin? If you think that private, scalable digital money should be worth 1% of digital gold, then Zcash should be worth about 5 times what it currently is. I can't predict the future, but 1% of Bitcoin seems like a pretty conservative estimate for a legitimate competitor. I think a fair assessment of Zcash's future value is 1% of Bitcoin in the conservative case, 5% in the neutral case, and 10% in the bullish case, with a very small percentage chance that Zcash actually becomes the next Bitcoin and maybe you 10,000x your money. Keep in mind that these percentages scale as Bitcoin grows as well. If you believe, like I do, that Bitcoin is going to be worth $1 million, that means that we could see Zcash at 10,000, 50,000, or $100,000. It's currently sitting around 500. Technology evolves over time, and Zcash iterates fast. Everyone in crypto realizes that money is a technology, and a powerful one. Money has evolved from bartering goods and services directly to seashells, to gold coins, to fiat money, and to the digital version of fiat money that we have today. These innovations have helped us scale society. So it would be hard to imagine a world where you order something on Amazon from China and you mail the producer gold coins in exchange for it. Bitcoin is the obvious next step in the evolution of money. It is a step function improvement from the fiat system that we have now. But why should it stop there? Historically, there's been long periods of time between these step function improvements in money. It took decades or centuries to go from gold to coins to fiat money to a digital financial system. But the world today moves much faster than it used to. We are all connected by the internet now, which means that information moves a lot faster than it used to. Part of what made Bitcoin successful was that anyone in the world with an internet connection could have access to it. For comparison, look at how quickly innovation is happening in the AI world. A new model drops, and within days, every lab in the world is dissecting it and taking the best things from it to implement into their new product. And those models drop only months after each other. The pace of innovation for all technologies has increased rapidly. The idea that there's a fork of Bitcoin that took its strengths and then added a new form of math, ZK proofs, that wasn't possible at the time Bitcoin was created, doesn't sound that crazy at all. In a 2010 Bitcoin forum, a user once suggested that Bitcoin implement privacy using nascent ZK technology. And Satoshi responded by saying, "This is a very interesting topic. If a solution was found, a much better, easier, more convenient implementation of Bitcoin would be possible." So the creator of Bitcoin understood that a better, their words, not mine, version of Bitcoin was possible, but just wasn't feasible at the time. Now, it's not only possible and feasible, but it's in production and rapidly improving. The Bitcoin protocol is very difficult to change. The community argues relentlessly about the tiniest changes to the system. And this is both good and bad. It's good because when you have a network that's so valuable, you don't want it to be easy to change. If it were easy to change, it would be vulnerable to attack. On the other hand, the world is rapidly changing around Bitcoin, and it has very real problems with scaling, privacy, and a future threat from quantum computers. If those problems can't be addressed in Bitcoin because the community can't align on a solution, then Bitcoin's future might not be as bright as we think. One of the reasons I like Zcash is because Zcash is self-funded, meaning that a portion of the protocol's fees go towards further development of Zcash. Now, there's been a lot of valid criticism of how those fees are set up. In its current state, token holders now vote on how those fees are distributed to different nonprofit organizations that are developing Zcash. This means that as new issues arise and the world continues to change, that Zcash will be able to handle those changes. As we're seeing now with Bitcoin, there is no leadership, and innovation by consensus is extremely slow and difficult, if possible at all. In other words, Bitcoin right now may be as good as it ever will be. Zcash, which is aligned with Bitcoin's values and has a real claim to be money, is rapidly improving. So private transactions that used to take a minute now take a few seconds. Is Zcash's self-funded model here objectively better? No. Is it possible that there's a middle ground between complete ossification and a protocol that's easy to change that might be the right balance for the future of money? I think yes. The idea that Bitcoin had some kind of immaculate conception is great, but the argument I'm making here is that the people who have already made the leap from a broken fiat money system to Bitcoin understand that a better version of money is possible. Once you make that leap, that idea is like a seed. It gets stuck in your head and it grows and it grows and it grows. Once you've already made the leap from fiat to Bitcoin, the leap to thinking that there's an even better money out there is really not that big. Bitcoin is not some sacred cow that we can't criticize or improve. To claim that it has no imperfections is to be disconnected from reality. I read a terrible take from a VC recently that basically said the conditions that Bitcoin and Ethereum were created under could never be recreated. To which I ask, why not? Why couldn't someone start a new proof of work network with no pre-sale or pre-mine? Yes, there are plenty of circumstances surrounding Bitcoin and its history that cannot be exactly reproduced. But to believe that nobody could create another great decentralized digital currency under different, unique conditions is more religious than scientific. I would argue that the fact that we now have a playbook from Bitcoin and Ethereum on how to fairly launch a new network means that it's actually far more likely that new ones get created. As I mentioned in my intro, I was reintroduced to Zcash after years of knowing that it existed, but never taking the time to learn how it worked. Now, I'm reading on X about a lot of similar cases. I call this information asymmetry, sometimes referred to as a slow cook in the meme world. Because you're still watching this video, you know about a token that most of the people in crypto have not taken the time to understand. And there lies value. As the price continues to rise, more people will have the same experience that you and I have had and come to the same realization. This is how I felt about Bitcoin when I first bought it, like I had discovered a secret. This information asymmetry is especially powerful with Zcash because it shares so many of the same traits and memes as Bitcoin. Money without a centralized authority, fairness, freedom, math, privacy. We already know that these memes work. An investment in Zcash is appealing to anyone that's ever purchased Bitcoin for its original values. That's a lot of people. There are many people who instinctively and reactively hate Zcash, and many of those are Bitcoiners. Their reflexivity is telling because they haven't taken the time to understand the technology or the values behind Zcash. If they had, they would recognize that they're almost the same as their own. It feels very similar to when Bitcoiners hated on Ethereum or when Ethereum people hated on Solana. Their inability to lower their egos and let their curiosity and values lead the way only serves to bring more attention to this asset that they now hate. Most of my successful crypto investments have come from recognizing that there are people much smarter than I am. I am smack dab in the middle of the midwit curve. Likely so are you. The real skill is not to train to be on the right side of the curve or train to be on the left. It's to recognize the people that are on the right side of the curve and to bet on them. You don't have to bet on everything that they talk about, but when a lot of the smartest people in tech and crypto are aligning on one thing, it's important that you listen and understand. Hal Finney, Zuko, Vitalik, Balaji, Naval, Kobe, Ansem, Mert, Tulip King. Feel free to hate on any of these people individually, but as a group, they are highly intelligent and better at predicting the future than most. All of these people are telling you that there is a legitimate competitor to Bitcoin that has been sitting in front of your face for 9 years. It is aggressively cheap compared to Bitcoin and technologically superior in almost every way, and yet you haven't even taken the time to look into it. And I'm no saint either. I did the exact same thing. I disregarded it because it was known as the coin that went down when everything else went up. Well, now it's going up. And it's important that we figure out why. Number 9 is the social layer. People underestimate the value of the social layer. Our heads have been filled with nonsense metrics from VCs like user growth, retention, and revenue. Rightfully so. I mean, these VCs have to go back to their LPs and explain why they made these investments. What they can't quantify or put into a spreadsheet is the strength and determination of the community around a project. The social layer is what makes Zcash powerful. It's not just the technology, but the people who had the willpower and the persistence to hold this token and to fight for its existence for years until it was relevant. The Zcashers are the same cypherpunks who fought for PGP in 1993. Edward Snowden risked his entire life to show that your right to privacy was being eroded by the state. When Sean Bowe says, we owe that to the ZEC holders and we owe that to the mission, we should take note of the mission. Unstoppable private money with no central authority. These guys have been laughed at for 9 years, all while making enormous contributions to math and ZK proofs and having their token perform awfully. I have no doubt that they will continue to go despite any obstacle. Along with the team itself are the heavyweight cypherpunks, builders, and cryptographers that I mentioned throughout the video. One of the beautiful things about Zcash is that its values resonate with people across the crypto ecosystem. Crypto ecosystems are vicious and generally really tribal. Zcash authentically stands for the values that brought most of us to crypto. It doesn't matter if you like buying NFTs on Ethereum, trading memes on Solana, or just holding your Bitcoin. If you believe in privacy, decentralized money, and freedom on the internet, then you believe in Zcash. In closing, every person in crypto has been searching for the next Bitcoin since they got here. It would be pretty ironic if it was built by someone who was in the cypherpunk movement, was in the original forums with Satoshi, had been working on private, unstoppable money for almost 15 years before the Bitcoin white paper dropped. If that token had been sitting in front of our faces for almost a decade, but was dismissed because people don't care about privacy, I might even say that it looks pretty obvious when you frame it that way. Do you know who really cared about privacy? Satoshi Nakamoto. And if they were here today and saw you begging the US government and Larry Fink to come buy your Bitcoin, do you think Satoshi would be a Bitcoiner or a Zcasher? Short the banks, short fiat, short the suits and the money bugs. Long math, privacy, and freedom. Welcome to the rebellion.